Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We're in the book of Exodus, and last time we had the big thing, right? Passover. We're finally out of Egypt.
We are.
Right?
Yeah.
So everything should be fine now.
Yeah, everything is perfect. It is. It is good till this week.
Yeah, bring. Where are we? What's going on?
Yeah, so last week we saw the last of the plagues. Pharaoh finally had enough, kicked them out. On their way out, the Israelites asked for and received gold, silver, and clothes from the Egyptians. Yes, here, just go.
Take it and go.
Just take it and go. Yep. We also saw the first Passover where God took the life of the Egyptians first, and then both human and animals, and passed over the Israelites.
There's so much good stuff in there. If you haven't watched last week's video, there's really some neat stuff in there. I love the Passover story because not only is it big in the past, but Jesus is called our Passover lamb, and just that whole thing. There's so much good stuff in there.
Yeah. So like you said, now we're at the point where what could happen?
Yeah, we're out. Everything's fine.
Right. But they still have a long way to go to become a nation. But first, they need to cross over the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Right. So God told Moses to camp by the Red Sea. So, that's where they're going to go.
Well, and again, the reason why we're here is because if you're looking on a map, you're like, that is the wrong direction. Why are we doing that? Because God had said last time, I'm not going to, you're brand new. I'm not going to walk you through massive enemy territory in the Philistines to get you back. I'm going to give you a little bit of a circuitous route. And he has another plan as why he's going that particular direction, but...
Right, but to Pharaoh, you look on a map, we got them.
Yeah.
Right, they're stuck. That's the stupidest place to be.
Why did you take that route? Moses, I thought you knew this area.
Right. So Pharaoh is going to have his heart hardened. He's going to think you're trapped. God's going to gain honor here because Pharaoh and his army will know that how great God is.
Yeah.
So Pharaoh brings 600 select chariots and the rest of his other chariots.
Yeah, not the select ones.
He's bringing the good tanks and then all the other tanks. And officers for every one of them.
Yeah.
He's coming loaded.
He is bringing everything, and like you said, he thinks the Israelites are just wandering around. He's going to wipe them out, or try to get them back or something, right?
Right. So the story covered in less than 30 seconds. Red Sea has parted. Israel crosses. Pharaoh and his armies enter. When they get about halfway through, the sea comes back together, kills Pharaoh and his armies. That was way less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But there's more details in here. So read it.
Yeah.
There's some cool things in here that we want to point out.
Yeah, it's interesting because God doesn't just, miraculously part the waters. He does it overnight with a wind. Sometimes we get this idea, whether it's from a movie potentially or whatever, that Moses just stands there and they just, God brings a wind and he opens it up.
But there is a part that he tells Moses has to do an action.
Yeah, he does.
Right before. So of course Israel knows that the Egyptians are coming.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. They would be freaking out.
Yep.
They'd just been part of 10 plagues.
Yeah.
And they saw God work. Shouldn't somebody have said, maybe God will save us?
Maybe he can handle this, right?
Yeah. So the people cry to Moses. Moses is still new at this. He freaks out. He cries to God. And God says, why are you crying to me?
I know. I love that. He's like, Go
lift up your hands. And, he has to lift up his hands and his staff to God and the sea will part. But like you said, overnight, there's a east wind, I think it was, that comes. And then we talked about this last week too, that they were actually following God. And he was a pillar of clouds during the day, and he was a pillar of fire by night.
Yeah.
And they were following him. Now, what God does is he positions himself behind the Israelites.
Yes.
Now. So he is on where he was between the Israelites and the Red Sea. Now he is between the Egyptians and the Israelites.
So again, this sort of picks up a similar theme. It's not exactly the same, but the similar theme where during the Passover, God was protecting them from the destroyer. now God is protecting them personally from their enemies again, so that they can be delivered.
So maybe it was the time it took for the ocean or the Red Sea to part, but there was protection there, which is awesome.
Yeah, probably while they were walking across as well. You got blocked.
So they can't get in. They have more time, and then they have to be able to get out. The Egyptians come in. They're definitely going to be faster.
Let's not forget, we have 2 to 3 million people, tens of millions or millions at least, if not tens of millions of animals, as they're like blah, 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 blah.
And it's not single file, but it's also not 500 across.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how much space there. This is going to take some time.
Right.
You know.
And the animals, I'll wait here. Come on.
This is not the time for the donkeys to be holding back. Right?
Yeah. So all the Egyptians perished, all of Israel was saved, and they feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and Moses.
Maybe we can trust Moses too, as God's spokesman.
Right. Chapter 15 is a song, right? It's rehashing all the events, which is way cool, right?
So this is a song of deliverance. It's a song of victory. They have a party. They're dancing. They're singing. And what's really neat about this is that in Revelation 14 or 15, the Song of Moses actually, it's 15, the Song of Moses actually shows up again. They sing the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb just before, now this is just after, but in Revelation it's just before the final judgments of the tribulation, before Jesus comes back. They sing the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb. And the Song of the Lamb is the only one that the lyrics are given in Revelation. Why? Because we already have the lyrics here for the Song of Moses.
You should start learning them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another point I'm going to bring up too shortly that ties this together again, but it's really interesting.
So in verse 1, they're giving full credit to God right off the bat, as they should. Verse 2, Lord is my strength. He's become my salvation. I love the salvation part in there. And it's true. He saved them. Yeah. This is my God. I will praise him just as God wanted. Yep. Who is like you, O God? So you get the idea. Song of praise. I love verses 14 through 16. It talks about the current inhabitants of the promised land where they're going to will tremble because of this.
Yeah, so it's not just a celebration of what God did, but also they are beginning to think that they can trust him about what he's promised to do in the future as well. Yeah.
Right. And I think this is really interesting because we're going to see in Joshua, in chapter 2, somebody says, we heard about what your God has done and our hearts melted and our courage failed because your God is the God in heavens and on earth.
Yeah. So in Joshua, we're 40 years after the fact, right? And the Canaanites are still scared of Israel because of the Red Sea event, right? 40 years earlier, they're still like, oh, we heard about that. Now, here's the cool thing. Here's another connection. In the book of Jeremiah, a couple of times in Jeremiah, he makes a connection between the Red Sea and the second coming of Jesus. Of course, they didn't call it the second coming of Jesus, but when Messiah comes to deliver Israel, which is the Revelation 15 thing, that's where that connection is. Because Jeremiah said, we have always sworn by the God who took us out of Egypt. We've sworn by God has not done anything greater than what's going on here. We have a song, we have the Red Sea, we have the whole thing. Jericho knew it. Here we are hundreds of years later in Jeremiah. That is still true today. But what Jeremiah says is one day there will be such a bigger event, a bigger deliverance that will stop using the Red Sea and will start swearing by the one who brings Israel back. That's the second coming.
Right.
So Exodus 15, Revelation, Jeremiah, everybody ties together. Joshua, everybody ties together. God has not rescued Israel in a greater way, even until today, since the Red Sea, until the second coming, and that will just blow it away.
Nice.
Really, really cool stuff.
Nice. So now everything is good.
Now
And
everything
they can
is
just
good.
walk. All right. So they walked for 3 days from the Red Sea, and they found no water. And it's hilarious. The murmuring has started.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not outright problems. It's just little talks. I don't have any water. Do you have water? You think there'd be water on the trip?
Did somebody?
Did they forget? Yeah.
As
what
if
can we
God,
drink?
as if, wait a minute, 3 days out from when? The Red Sea? As if God doesn't know how to handle water?
Yeah, yeah. So they come to a lake, and of course the water there is bitter, which I take to be poisonous.
Yeah.
In there, Moses cries out to God. God shows him a tree. Moses somehow knows that he needs to take the tree and throw it in the water.
Mm-hmm.
He does that, and the water's fine, and they can drink again. The water's safe to drink. God then gives them an ordinance, and the ordinance is, if you diligently obey and do what is right in God's sight and pay attention to his commandments and keep all of his statutes, right? So these are the things you have to do, conditional ordinance here. Then all the diseases that God brought on the Egyptians will not be brought on the Israelites, because he is your God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, unfortunately, there are groups today that take only the last part of the verse. I will bring none of these diseases on you because I am the Lord, your healer, Jehovah Rapha. And they take that as a promise for themselves. Well, God's not going to make any diseases on me. I'm going to be healthy and, everything. And they completely miss the context, and they completely miss everything that's going on. Like you said, this is conditional. If you obey all these things, which we haven't even gotten to all the commandments yet. They're 3 days in, and God hasn't even given them commandments yet. And he says, listen, I'm establishing this. If you obey me, if you do all these things, I will not bring these diseases on you. Well, they didn't. They did have these things happen to them. But we can't take the last half of a verse and make a claim for ourselves. Oh, God is never going to bring a disease on me. Well, that's not what it says, right? So we have to, is God our healer? Do we pray to God for healing? Yes, that's true. But that is a timeless truth that comes out of God's character, not out of a conditional promise made to the nation, centuries ago. So we have to be careful with that.
Okay. So then about 2 months after the Exodus, the entire company of Israelites, they were murmuring again against Moses and Aaron. They were in the wilderness, saying things like, oh, we had pots of meat in Egypt. We ate bread until we were completely full. We're going to die of hunger out here.
Yeah.
And God told Moses he was going to test the people to see if they would follow his laws or not, which I think is kind of cool. So Aaron told the people to gather around. God was talking to Moses, and God has heard the murmurings. God is going to give you meat in the evenings and bread in the morning to satisfy you, and God is going to do this so the people know that the Lord is their God. So that evening, quail showed up in abundance. And then the next morning, the morning dew, when the morning dew evaporated, there was a flaxy substance like frost on the ground. This was what we're going to be calling manna.
Yeah.
And the bread. And Moses explained to the people they needed to gather a day's supply for each person that lived in the tent. There's a big discussion on that. There's a big discussion on, how big, how much you gather. And basically, you just need to gather a day's worth of food for your people. And Moses said, you can't keep any of this till the morning. Of course, some people tried to keep it, and it was full of worms. It began to stink. It also started to melt when the sun got hot. And on the sixth day, Moses told them, now, today you need to gather twice as much. Yeah. And Moses explained to the leaders, so tomorrow there's going to be a cessation of work, right? All work is going to stop. It's a holy day. It's a holy day. We're going to call it the Sabbath to the Lord. So this, you need to bake today, or bake or boil, grind today. Today you need to cook, because you're not going to be cooking tomorrow. Right. Whatever is left today, you're going to put aside, and that's going to be kept till the morning. On the sixth day, you're going to gather. For 6 days you gather, but on the seventh, the Sabbath, there's going to be nothing to gather. Of course, some of the people tried to gather on the seventh day too.
And there wasn't anything there, right? So Sabbath, Shabbat, simply means rest, right? The Sabbath was never meant to be they weren't going to church. This wasn't a day of worship. It was just a day of rest. Like, why does that matter? Because they've been slaves for over 200 years.
Right. I don't think they got many breaks.
No, they've been working 24/7. It's been hard. And so God said, I tell you what, first thing that I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you a day off. You've been walking, you've been running, I'm going to give you a day off. And in fact, I'm going to give you a day off every week because you need a day off. You just need a day of rest, right? And there are actually two things that Jesus said. Jesus makes two statements that connect back to Exodus chapter 16. First, in the well-known thing that most people call the Lord's Prayer, he has this line in here that says, "Give us today our daily bread." That immediately his listeners went back to Exodus chapter 16. This was daily bread, right? And God provided it for them. Number two, he made a statement once where he said the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. We're not supposed to, have to revolve our lives around what we can do and can't do. And, it's not supposed to be a day of worry about breaking laws. It's supposed to be a gift from God, a day of rest. Now, we don't have a Sabbath law for us, but there is a Sabbath principle, and we'll get into this in a couple of chapters, probably next time. But there is a Sabbath principle of even God ceased from his work of creation in Genesis on the seventh day. The seventh, actually, in Hebrew, the word seven and the word rest sound similar. There's a word play going on there. It's just a day to stop work, to take a break. And so we still need that. God designed us that way. There's no law. We don't have to take Saturday off work or whatever, but we should be taking time to rest. Just because God designed it that way. We our bodies need that. And there's a principle, and we can see that again next time.
Okay. We get an idea of what manna tasted like. Mm-hmm. It said it was like coriander seed. It was white, tasted like wafers with honey. Mm-hmm. That's all the better we got. So as we know, the Israelites ate it for 40 years until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Mm-hmm. And then we'll see it stops. So they also were told to fill a jar for the generation to come so they could see what it looked like. And they stored it in the Ark of the Testimony. Mm-hmm. So this Ark of the Testimony seems to be new, right? Yeah. This is the first time we've heard of it here?
Yeah, this is the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Testimony. So this is sort of like a jump ahead, a flash forward real quick, because all they did is they kept some of this in a jar. The ark will be built later in Exodus, and so he's saying, okay, this is where they kept it. This is where we kept it, but obviously they didn't do it here because it wasn't built yet. But just sort of an information, we find out that there were a few items that were in the ark, and this jar of manna was one of the items that they carried around with them.
They continued to travel. Again, there was no water, and the people were murmuring, "Why did he bring us out of Egypt just to kill us?"
How many times does God have to do something with water for them to actually finally catch on?
I know, but every time I laugh at him, then I think to myself, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I keep making the same mistake over and over again. And don't you think I would learn? All right, so Moses was mad at the people, but he was also somewhat scared for his safety. So God told him what to do. He took some of the elders of Israel and his staff, and he struck a specific rock that he was told to in Horeb, and water would come out for the people.
Yeah.
Great. And then I think we end this chapter with a fight. So what I think is cool here, and I think our key takeaway here is we've seen God provide food. Mm-hmm. We've seen God provide water. Mm-hmm. Although maybe a little later than some people wanted. We also
multiple times.
We also see God protecting His people.
Yeah.
From the nation of Egypt. Now, like you were saying, the nation is going to have to learn to fight on their own.
Yeah.
But they really don't, right?
Yeah,
God is still going to be there,
yeah.
Right? So, a nation, the Amalekites, they came and they attacked Israel. Moses told Joshua to choose some men, go out and fight. So this wasn't a what do we do?
Right.
They seem to already have a plan. Joshua, you take some people. And
but it's fight. Also this is going to be smaller. This is sort of what we were talking about with the Philistines. Had they gone up into Philistine territory, they would have just been wiped out, overwhelmed and wiped out. This is, I'm not saying that the Amalekites were nobodies, but this was a smaller thing. It didn't take everybody. It didn't take the entire, 600,000 men. It's, hey, Joshua, you grab some guys and go take care of this. Yeah. God will fight for you, but this is a small scale thing.
And that is an interesting point, because they could have put 600,000 men out there and it would have been over quick. Yeah. But it almost seems like you matched up army sizes, and, no fair having a bigger army. Now, you always brought a bigger army, but yeah, it does seem that way.
Yeah, this is almost like, and again, I don't want to minimize what's going on here, but from my basketball background, this is almost like a scrimmage.
Yeah, right.
This
I was going to say second team, but
it was. I mean, it wasn't themselves, but it was like, we're not taking everybody out there. This is Joshua. You grab a few guys, or a select guy, not a few necessarily, but this is not like.
So they go out with their army. Moses, Aaron, and a man named Hur. They were up on the hill watching. And when Moses lifted his hands to heaven, the Israelites were winning. And of course, you can't do that forever. So when his arms came down, when he was tired, when he rested, the Amalekites started winning. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see Aaron and Hur go,
we got this.
So Moses put his arms up. They stood on either side. They helped him with his arms up. They brought him a rock to sit on. And at the end of the day, the Israelites won, and they destroyed Amalekite and the armies.
Yeah. And this is the first time we see Joshua starting to play a big role. And of course, he will play a bigger role as time goes on as well.
Yep. Yeah, and we come to the end of the chapter, which is a good place to stop.
Yeah, so we still have some trust, like we have to follow through, like we learned last time, learning to trust God, trust Moses. Still have some trust issues going on, but I think you said it really well. God is showing them little by little in different areas: food, water, protection, war, whatever. This is what life is going to be like, and we haven't gotten to Sinai yet. That's coming very soon. Right. But that's where he's really going to bring everything together. So these are little battles that they have to get through to get to the big stuff. Right. So,
right, cool. Well, we're on the move.
We are on the move. Some fun stuff in here. Hopefully you're seeing some of these same things, especially over these last couple of weeks. We have a common theme here. That God is taking care of them, and he wants to take care of them if they would let him. And so far, they haven't done that very well, right?
Consistent.
So, as always, make your comments, send your comments, questions into us. We'd love to hear those. Subscribe, share this with as many people as you think will find this helpful. And we will pick up here with some family issues or some family stuff next time, and get into some other well-known stuff as we continue our trek with the Israelites through the book of Exodus. See you then.
Bye, everyone.